Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon, and then I post this video up to Facebook, and then I do this on Wednesdays, answering whatever questions I did not get to. So this video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. Boom, shakalaka done. I'd like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. They're an online therapy company. They are international. All you got to do is go to BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez, fill out some questions, and they will set you up with a licensed professional therapist, master's level or PhD level in your state, or if you are outside the United States, master's level or PhD level that can practice outside the United States. So thank you, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. Okay, there is that. All right, so had a lot of questions on the movies and TV shows that I was talking about that were, not healthy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So people were asking, well, what are some examples of films that accurately show domestic violence, child abuse, et cetera? So the first one is 10 domestic violence films that accurately portray the problem. Waitress from 2007. Independence Day, not the Will Smith film, but the one featuring Diane Wiest playing an abused wife as a secondary character. So Medea's Family Reunion, believe it or not. Scattered throughout the comedy, there are serious moments. One of Medea's nieces is being abused by her fiance and trying to hide it, while another niece is abusive toward her two children. Keep an eye out for a poignant cameo by Maya Angelou. I, Tonya, 2018. Talking about Tonya Harding's life. This Boy's Life from 1993. A Star is Born. Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper are fantastic in this heartbreaking fourth remake of Abuse and Fame. So that's a heart-wrenching film. Safe Haven from 2013. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore from 1974. Sleeping with the Enemy, 1991. Fried Green Tomatoes, 1991, and The Burning Bed. I don't know if they mentioned that. Not Without My Daughter, Diary of a Mad Black Woman, Purple Rain, Dolores Claiborne, Take My Eyes, Something About Amelia, The Glass Castle, The Color Purple, Double Jeopardy, No One Would Tell, The Great Santini, Gaslight from 1944, The Burning Bed with Farrah Fawcett, Enough, 2002, and What's Love Got to Do with It from 1993. So those are all good movies that accurately portray domestic violence. If you want to educate somebody, make them watch one of those. This one is films that accurately portray child abuse, what it's like. The Bastard Out of Carolina, Precious, An American Crime, Good Will Hunting. That's a great movie. Oh my God, I love that movie. The Color Purple, obviously. Flowers in the Attic, This Boy's Life, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, The Girl Next Door, No Child of Mine, The Butterfly Effect, Radio Flyer, Carrie, The Elizabeth Smart Story, Song for a Raggy Boy. So those are some of the movies. Something About Amelia, The Glass House, Daddy's Little Girls, Sybil. Any of the Sybils, those that are just, there was a remake in 2007, but both Sybils were really good. Gracie's Choice, Antoine Fisher, Aurora, Chronicle, Dead Poets Society, The Unloved. Tons of movies that portray abuse accurately. Okay, now on the flip side, what about top parenting films that inspire? Sound of Music. So the way that Maria treats the children is awesome. Some of these I would argue with. They have National Lampoon's Vacation. I'm like, no. Mrs. Doubtfire, I would also say no, because it's like that shows a couple that was arguing and divorced to the point where she didn't even recognize that her nanny was her husband in drag. So I can't say yes to that one. This one says Crazy Stupid Love. Brave. She's having a baby. This is 40. Parenthood with Steve Martin. And that's it for that. Let's see. Best movies about parenthood. The Kids Are All Right. Somewhere. Parenthood is mentioned again. Tully. The Pursuit of Happiness. Stepmom. Okay. And then I'm going to sneeze. Oh, Lord. Woo! Okay. And then this one is stories with the best romantic comedy relationships. So like the healthier of them. So one is called Before Sunrise, 1995. Groundhog Day. While You Were Sleeping, Something's Gotta Give, and Love, Simon. Now, the only thing I would say about Groundhog Day is that Bill Murray's character, funny, but he's a complete and total self-centered narcissist. And in that movie, he had to keep living the same day over and over and over and over and over and over and over until he finally got it right and stopped doing it for himself. So, but it's kind of like, how many years, how many decades, how many centuries did it take for him to get it? Because it's like for everybody else, it's like no time has passed. But for him, he had to keep living it over. And in order to master the piano, that takes a long time. In order to do all these things that he learned how to do, that takes a long time. So again, I think it kind of gives that unrealistic idea that they can change, and they really can't. They can't. I mean, if they were to live 1,000 lifetimes and figure it out, maybe. But I mean, as much as I love Groundhog Day, and I do, I can't agree with that's a really good showing of a healthy relationship. It's a healthy relationship when he finally gets it and decides not to be selfish and decides to, do things to actually help people. That's fine, but that's not reality. So there is that. Let's see. Benny and June. The Holiday, and When Harry Met Sally. That's mine and John's movies. that's our movie, When Harry Met Sally. So, because they started off as friends and then they became romantic, and that's exactly what happened to me and John. So, that's a really good one, the Harry Met Sally one, because it's like it shows that they were friends first, and all of the trials and tribulations and working it out and not being stupid and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean that's a good one. So anyway, talking about the unrealistic views that movies and TVs give. So TV shows. Somebody wrote in, and it just broke my heart. They wrote in about their child, and the child had been watching Beauty and the Beast, and in Beauty and the Beast, Belle dances with the Beast, and he's kind, and he changes, and all of this stuff. Well, in this particular abusive situation, the dad was apparently a drunk, from what I could understand. And so the little girl was like trying to dance with him and, play with him and get him to, pour the teapot and things like that. And he took the teapot and apparently threw it away. And so then that night, the mom comes in to read her favorite story, which is Beauty and the Beast, to her. And the little girl started crying. And she was like, "But Mommy, I tried dancing with him. In the movie, he changes and he's nice. Daddy didn't change." And that just broke my heart. That's a 3-year-old. That's the way 3-year-olds think. So this is why it's important to work on your inner child, because that's that 3-year-old that survivors of abuse get stuck with, in that mode of, oh, if I just do this thing that I saw in this movie, it'll make it right and they'll love me and everything will be fine. And that's kind of what this little girl was saying in her head to her mom. It's like, I tried dancing with them and it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And so kids always make it something about themselves as opposed to the adults, because kids are very egocentric. Not egocentric in the way of, oh, it's all about me, but egocentric in the way of, oh, it must be my fault. I must have created this. I must have done this. That's what kids do. So it's a little bit of magic thinking, and also magic thinking that just by, bringing out Mrs. Potts and dancing and having a tea party with the dad who was abusive and an alcoholic would somehow magically make him change. That's heartbreaking. And that little girl expressed that and started crying. It was like, why aren't I good enough? Why did this happen? Why didn't he change? And so that's why I'm saying when we watch romantic comedies, it's not the adult in us that's getting hooked by those messages. It's the inner child in us that's getting hooked by those messages, that magic thinking. So when we as adults have been through neglect or abuse, that inner child, whatever age we were when mom or dad, whoever it was, neglected us or abused us, that's the age that kind of comes roaring to the forefront when we're, having an adult relationship. It's like instead of dealing as an adult, all of a sudden we're dealing as if we're 3 or as if we're 10 or as if we're an angry teenager or, whatever. So that's why it's really, 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 really important to work on the inner child. Inner Child Workbook, Catherine Taylor, or Inner Child Workbook by Lucia Cappuccioni. Either one of those would be good. And it's, how do I explain this? I think a lot of times people get stuck in an abusive relationship because we do have that magic thinking going of, oh, but I can change them. Oh, but if I can just make them see how amazing I am or how great this relationship could be, or do you see where I'm going with that? So it's really important to train yourself to not deal with coulda, shoulda, wouldas. It needs to be what is. Not coulda, shoulda, woulda. It could be so great. It would be so great. It should be so great. Well, if the person were sane, yeah. But if you're dealing with somebody who's abusive, they're not sane. They can't see you. They can't see themselves, really. So they can't see you. They can't hear you because they can't hear themselves. They're not introspective. They don't look in the mirror and go, hey, what do I need to clean up today? Hey, hello, good to see you. Have a great day. They don't have that cog. So it's really important to work on yourself, work on the self-esteem. The Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. The Disease to Please, Harriet Breaker. You cannot please somebody who's unpleasable. They are unpleasable. They don't want to be pleased. They want to find fault with everything and everybody, and they want to be miserable. They enjoy it, weirdly. So that's what's going on, is that, we grow up watching these fairy tales and rom-coms and things like that. And there's that little part of us, there's that child part of us that goes, oh, but we can, if we just dance with them, if we just make them tea, if we just, they'll change. The clock will strike 12 and they'll change. They're not going to change. And that keeps us stuck living in that hope that they're going to change. They don't change. They don't ever change. In fact, the only way they change is to get worse. That's it. In the history of ever, there has never been a narcissist that has stopped being a narcissist and has been healthy and normal. They don't exist. And anyone who tells you they do is selling you something. So, they don't change. And that's heartbreaking for a little kid. And if you're dealing with a child that is, kind of living in that kind of fantasy, because that's the thing about kids. Kids are able to suspend their disbelief and live in that fantasy, live in that world. And that's what that little 3-year-old was doing. Is like, oh, if I do this, daddy will be nice, So it's wonderful because they do have such a rich, wonderful, imagination and things like that. But then it hurts them and hurts us because we have that ability to suspend the disbelief and not see what's right there. Does that make sense? So it's a matter of being able to suspend your disbelief in a safe and appropriate environment. So, like, for example, going to Disneyland, you can suspend your disbelief and it's a safe and appropriate environment. It is not a safe and appropriate environment if you're suspending your disbelief when you're out dating. So it's like you need to be able to see what is there and not live in that fantasy of coulda, shoulda, woulda, I wish, that kind of thing. It's like, nope, what's there? What's the reality? That kind of thing. And that's hard. That's a hard landing. That's really is, because I know for a lot of us, not just me, I know a lot of survivors of abuse, in order to survive, we escaped into books, TV, movies, whatever we could escape into to save ourselves. And living in that fantasy was more comfortable and safer than living in the reality of what we had going on. So it's really a matter of getting with a good trauma therapist, working on living in the here and now, this present moment, not the past, not the future, not an imaginary future, not anything else except this present moment. And that's really, really important. I cannot stress that enough. And if you have children that have been affected by an abusive parent, by an abusive spouse, etc., and they have expressed to you that kind of magic thinking of, oh, if I just do this, this will fix them. You got to get them into therapy. You've got to work with them, and you've got to help them understand this is a fairy tale. This is reality. It's not your fault that daddy or mommy won't be nice. Ouch. Yeah. And that's tough for kids because, like I said, they're egocentric and they think everything is something that they said or did or something that they didn't say or didn't do. So it's really important to talk to them about, hey, this is not because of you. This is because of them. They're an adult and this is what they're choosing to do. And that's perfectly okay to say. That is perfectly okay to say. I know that lawyers freak out and are like, oh my God, you can't badmouth the other parent. Well, you're not badmouthing if you're speaking the truth. So there that is. Okay. All right. So that is that for TVs and movies and things like that. Universal Studios was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I still like Disneyland better. But it's a little more for adults, teens and adults, I think. So some of the rides I think would be too scary for little kids. So anyway, that was that. So, all right. So this weekend, no show. No show this weekend. On the 14th, I'm going to be talking about stop oversharing. And we're going to talk about all the ways that oversharing is hurting you and how to stop it. Because it's hurting you if you're in a legal battle with an abuser. Trust me on that one. Also, you don't want to overshare with flying monkeys. So we're going to, or, abusive family members or whatever. So we're going to talk about how to stop oversharing. So things you can do, and I'll give you a hint. It's inner child. It is inner child. It's that little inner child going, but I want to be heard. Well, that's great, but you got to be heard by the right people. And if it's the wrong people, you know what I'm saying? All right, so no show this weekend. On the 14th, stop oversharing. All right, kids, have a great week, and I will talk to you later. Bye.